I work summers as a camp counselor up in the northern stretches of Ontario, Canada. On this particular night, I was out with a group of 10-year-old boys for a routine overnight trip on the same lake our camp is based around. Pretty standard stuff as we canoed out to our site, set up camp, and let the kids run wild swimming, building forts and playing games while me and my co-counselor Mike took turns keeping an eye on them. We cooked over the fire, shared stories, roasted s'mores, the classic Canadian camping vibes. By around 9:30 p.m., I told the kids to pack it in for the night. Their tents were tucked a short walk away from the lake, but still within sight of our fire pit. With the kids down for the night, Mike and I hung back by the water quietly chatting and smoking, just soaking in the stillness before calling it ourselves. What happened next still gives me chills. We were both staring out into the black, glassy lake, and we noticed a faint light slowly moving toward us, hovering just above the water. At first, we were just speculating that maybe it was a boater or someone night fishing, but as it got closer, we realized it was a small light mounted on the front of a kayak, with someone paddling toward us. Now, part of our counselor training is learning how to handle strangers when you're responsible for a group of kids on public land, so I was ready to give the usual speech about how we were camping with an organized group, and kindly asked them to move along. But as the kayak drifted closer and the figure came into view, my gut dropped. It was an older woman, probably in her 60s, with long, stringy gray hair trailing into the lake. Her face sunken and leathery like she'd been out in the elements far too long. Her eyes looked almost lifeless beneath her wrinkles, and when she finally spoke, she revealed a mouth mostly devoid of teeth. I froze. She looked right at me and asked, "Are all your children safe in bed?" Then pointed toward the tents. I stammered out that they were fine and told her she needed to leave. She just gave a strange, knowing smile and said, "That's good," just as expected for this time, then silently turned her kayak and paddled off into the darkness like some ghostly vision. Mike and I just stood there, rattled to our core. We checked on the kids immediately, then grabbed our hunting knives and stayed by the fire, uneasy and alert, but it didn't stop there. Maybe half an hour later, I got a text from a female counselor leading a different group across the lake. She wrote something like, "Hey Sean, quit messing with us. This isn't funny, the kids are getting scared." My heart skipped. I called her immediately and told her what we had just seen, and that it wasn't a prank. That's when she told me one of her campers had opened his tent to pee and saw a woman with long hair standing near the shoreline, arms stretched out toward them. This happened about 4 years ago when my boyfriend and I were still pretty new in our relationship. My sister had suggested this snorkeling spot as a fun getaway. It was this flooded quarry turned campground, known for its crystal clear water and cool diving attractions, like a sunken helicopter and a school bus. So we decided to make it a camping trip, just the two of us. When we arrived to check in, we both got this strange, unsettling feeling about the place, but we didn't mention it to each other until after we were already home. At first, everything seemed great. We were snorkeling in the shallow part of the quarry, and even though the drop-off into the deep black water gave me an eerie feeling, I was having fun. The water was 65 feet deep, and as soon as you passed the shallow edge, it just plummeted into complete darkness. That's actually when I realized I might be terrified of open water. There was something deeply disturbing about how still the lake was, probably because being a quarry meant there was no current. Later that night, we were winding down at our campsite, which was in this grassy patch, down a small hill from the road surrounded by woods. Across the field was another campsite that looked like it had been lived in for a while, but the neighbors weren't there yet. We were roasting hot dogs over the fire when they finally returned, but not long after, they went straight to bed. Maybe 20 or 30 minutes later, things started to get strange. My boyfriend and I were chatting quietly when we both noticed this figure standing up the hill, watching us. Because of the firelight casting shadows, we couldn't see his face or any details, but we both knew he was staring right at us, half hidden behind our neighbor's truck. He just stood there silently for what felt like forever before slowly walking down the road. We watched him move through the trees that bordered both our campsite and the road. Each time he passed behind a tree, I braced myself for when he would appear again, on the other side of the other tree, then another, and another. But then he didn't come out. I stared, waiting, but he was just gone. I could tell my boyfriend was trying to brush it off, and I went along with it, convincing myself it was nothing. We even ended up walking back to the quarry later that night. The stars reflecting on the still water were beautiful, but that black abyss was unnerving. Eventually, we got back to our tent, smoked a joint, and tried to relax. I started to feel uneasy and I tried to blame it on the weed, but then after a long silence, my boyfriend whispered, "Do you feel like we're being watched?" I nervously laughed and asked why he'd say that, but I was already scared. He wanted to step outside the tent, so we stood near my car, and then I had this stupid idea that we'd be safer standing in the middle of the open field, thinking if someone approached us, at least we'd see them coming. We were barely in the field when we noticed a dark figure again, standing maybe 20 yards away. It looked just like the one from earlier, and he was walking the same direction as us. We changed direction, and so did he. We said if he matched us again, we'd make a run for it. When he did, we sprinted straight to the car. I watched him from the seat, and he just stood there for a moment, then slowly walked back into the trees while staring at us the whole time. My boyfriend said we should leave, and I agreed, but our gear was still outside, so we quietly packed up, trying not to scare each other more. And then came the weirdest part. My headlights wouldn't work, and there was this strange fog over the windshield that didn't clear up no matter what we did. We had to drive through those dark woods with only our low beams and that fog blurring everything, barely able to see the road. But the second we got to a gas station, the fog vanished like it had never been there. We then went back on the road and made it home around 1 a.m. The next day, I told my dad what happened, and he just looked at me and said he was glad we got out when we did, or we might have been murdered. Later, I found out 2 people had actually died there while snorkeling. My boyfriend and I still talk about it sometimes, and we go back and forth between thinking it was just some crazy guy or something worse. My fiance and I was racially attacked. My fiance and I were on the second night of a short camping trip at a popular campground about 30 minutes from where we live. For context, he's black, and we live in a mostly white, very conservative, and often racist area, which becomes important later. The first night, we heard strange noises in the woods around us. The site to our right was taken, but the one to our left was empty. We'd camped in this exact spot the year before, so we were familiar with the area and the kinds of animals that might be lurking. That night, we heard something large moving around near the tent. Probably a deer, we thought, so we shrugged it off and went to sleep. The next day, we spent the day with my family at a battlefield in a nearby town, which was a surprise my fiance had planned because he was going to propose to me. We stayed with them until around 6 in the evening before heading back to our site. And that's when we knew something was off. Someone had clearly been in our tent. The blankets were tossed around, clothes were on the floor, my backpack had been messed with, and my underwear was missing. But being naive 19-year-olds, we convinced ourselves it was fine, since nothing major had been taken and figured the person wouldn't come back. That night, we lit a fire, roasted hot dogs and s'mores, smoked a few cigarettes, and celebrated getting engaged. Around 9:30 p.m., we put out the fire and crawled into the tent to celebrate a little more privately. Soon after, the noises returned. This time, we really listened and could clearly make out footsteps, and then, even more disturbing, a man whispering. We looked at each other in wide-eyed panic and realized there wasn't just one person. There were 2. Both whispering, both moving around our tent. Without saying it outright, we knew what we had to do. My fiance said he had to use the bathroom, and I nodded. The bathrooms were up the hill, and most people from the lower campsites drove up. As we scrambled to get dressed, he turned on the light and put on his binder. That's when we heard a voice, right outside the tent. "What are you doing?" The way he said it sent ice down my spine, like he was amused, like he had been watching us the whole time. And in that moment, something just snapped. We grabbed what we could, and my fiance clutched his keys and his knife, yanked open the tent, pulled me up, and we ran like hell for the car. I could hear the footsteps behind us at first, then veering off to another campsite. At the bathroom, we tried to calm down and figure out what to do. Do we sleep in the car? Drive to town? Finally, we decided to go back and pack up fast. By now, it was midnight. We ripped up everything, tent and all, shoved it in the car, grabbed our folding chairs, and as I hopped in, I quickly ran back to yank off the nameplate from the post, as it had my full name. As we pulled away, headlights sweeping over the trees, I saw them. It was 2 tall white men stepping out from the woods, right where our tent had been. I recognized them as they'd been circling our campsite in a truck earlier, glaring at us and whispering to each other. One wore camo hunting gear, while the other wore a Confederate flag tank top, and both carried large hunting knives, unsheathed and ready. One of them started walking towards our car almost in a jog, until the other stopped him. I looked straight at the man in camo and he smiled, slow and cruel, then shook his head like we'd just cheated death. We didn't go home the normal way. We took back roads, weird turns, anything to avoid being followed, and called my dad on the way to let him know we were coming. When we got there, we told him everything and he just shrugged it off like we were being paranoid. So I never told anyone else until now. But I know what I saw and I know what that night was. My fiance was the only non-white person at any of those campsites. It wasn't a coincidence that the two men who wore Confederate flags and had one on their truck were the same ones stalking us, whispering outside our tent and waiting with knives. It still makes me shiver to think how close we were to getting seriously hurt or worse, and how lucky we were that we ran when we did. This is the story of when I found something horrible in the woods. I was 15 years old at the time and was camping out in the middle of nowhere with my family and part of my extended family like my aunt, uncle, and cousins. These were all people we knew fairly well from previous camping trips, so it was considered normal to hit it off with them from the start and act like we've known each other forever within the hour. My parents trusted me a lot and I liked my fun, but I liked getting home in time for dinner equally as much. So when I was gone most of the day with other people from the camp, they didn't think much of it. The only rule was that I had to be back at the RV to eat dinner, and before 8:30 p.m. in the evening. So picture a group of 6 teenagers between 15 to 16 years old, out in the middle of the woods with no adult supervision for the vast majority of the day. Just a recipe for success right there. But this particular day we found a neat little deer trail we hadn't found in the 2 years we'd been there before. On second thought, it didn't really seem like a deer trail. It snaked through a really thick part of the underbrush, maybe a foot of clear ground. It's a really hard thing to pick out of the brush unless you're either really looking or know where it is. It was promptly explored and marked with a broken branch outside of the entrance and quickly forgotten. Except I remembered this special little tunnel. That night while we were all eating dinner, one of the adults proposed that we played manhunt out in the woods at night. Not everyone was totally on board with this idea, but in the grand scheme of the plan, they came around. Everyone got a flashlight, and everyone was assigned to a team. For those of you who aren't sure what manhunt is, basically, everyone playing is given a flashlight, and they are divided into 2 groups. It's basically like a glorified flashlight tag, but there's a catch. As you catch people, you have to correctly identify who they are, and if you can, they join forces with the hunters. The last man standing gets a candy bar or something, whatever is being offered as a prize. This is how we played it. For the first round, I got lumped in with the runners who are the ones getting chased by the hunters. We get a 5-minute head start to run, climb a tree, or whatever the hell we want to do to evade the hunters. Usually I'm the one up in the tree, but that never really worked out as being the winning spot. So to try and score a win for once, I decided to play the cat and use one surefire method of escape. And the hiding spot was that same spot I described earlier. It took most of the head start time to find the damn thing, because it was so well hidden and out of the way. As I passed hiding spots, I heard hushed, smothered whispering between siblings who were questioning my actions. It should be noted that I have bad hearing, as my ears are possibly my greatest asset in this game. But when I'm just reaching the destination, I hear the short blast of the air horn announcing that the 5 minutes are up. I dove into this minute little path in the undergrowth, shuffling on my hands and knees until I'm about halfway in. I was crouching down like some huge, malformed quail. The hunters are doing an initial sweep through the trails, looking for obvious hiders and people caught out trying to change spots. When they finally reach me, they reach the dead end and go straight back. I try to readjust myself and crawl further down the tunnel. I honestly don't know how it happened, but I found an even more hidden path within that one, and accidentally dragged my stupid body down the rabbit hole. Except, instead of ending in a dead end, this one ended in a slight hollow. After I gathered my senses, I gazed down and saw something. It was a body. It was a younger looking woman, who was naked and covered in lacerations and stab wounds in the fetal position. Her glassy glazed eyes seemed to look straight through me. I was too scared to scream, and I froze there while dark burgundy stains formed on my jeans. And then I heard someone else coming along that path. I let out a short, trembling whimper and started moving. Whoever was on the path stopped, and then eagerly started moving forward again. I could hear their panting. It was the uneven breaths of a man who was getting closer and closer to me by the second. By some wondrous, beautiful miracle, he missed the path leading to the brushy hollow. I heard him moving down past the entrance, dragging something clunky and awkward behind him. I heard clinking noises and the occasional effort to silence the small, sharp noises. I heard a low curse somewhere towards the end of the tunnel, and I blasted out of the undergrowth tunnel like a bullet forcing its way out a barrel. Cracks, crashes, and obnoxious rustling was all around me as I heard the man sharply intake a breath and begin to move towards me. The hoarse, deep panting was getting closer and closer to me, which is a testament to how I was too slow at exiting. Somehow I exploded out of the entrance, got onto my wobbly, half-asleep legs, and started booking it down the trail. The unknown pursuer was close behind me for a bit, but it seemed like he was too exhausted to chase me at the same speed for long. I know everyone loves to rip on the fact that people always trip in horror movies, but in all honesty, tripping is something I am amazed I didn't do. It felt like an eternity, but I finally reached the main trail running back to the camp and sprinted down screaming bloody murder. Reaching the camp was easy, but trying to explain why I woke up half the people in the camp and bolted out of the woods at breakneck speed was harder. When I finally choked the words out to explain, I remember a profound, insidious silence throughout the group of adults waiting at the mouth of the trail. I really don't remember a whole lot from that point on. I know the cops were called, and my mother and aunt ran shrieking and wailing along the trail, calling for the other kids to come back to safety. They rounded everyone up in 30 seconds flat and barreled back into the camp. The police came and found a man out in the woods creeping along the trail clutching a knife. They found a black garbage bag with a plethora of sharp instruments, and a saw was found abandoned on the trail with some speckled and smeared with dried blood. To this day, I don't think there's really any getting over it. I still have nightmares sometimes of the man chasing me, breathing heavily down the back of my neck trying to catch me, and sometimes he succeeds.